Now we have a very strong minister who really wants to make things happen. I'm really happy with the governance. He's not only just a Minister of Earthquakes, he's Minister of Transport, he's also now Minister of Local Bodies as well. So that gives us, while there's a lot of power in one man, we have the wider check in terms of the cabinet process. In terms of getting that key infrastructure going, the governance around that key infrastructure with CERA, I think we've got very strong governance there with people around the table, people from CERA, people from the City Council, but also the contractors as well, sit around the table, setting the priorities. I think that's going to be a very well governed process going forward. Communication, people are really keen to hear what's going on. It's almost an insatiable demand for information. There are delays, and that's incredibly frustrating. It's very hard setting the timeframes, but a lot of those timeframes are set by the insurers and EQC. And that's actually an area where the governance isn't working so well. If you want to get your house fixed, it's not clear who's responsible in many cases, and it's causing a lot of frustrations. And I think that's clearly something that will come out of the review of EQC, because at the moment it's bouncing back at your insurers, at EQC. That lack of clarity of who's in charge is a real problem. I mean, I say in terms of the delays, up until, the initial event was really about the guys in the uniforms, the firemen, the policemen, the people really doing those initial fixes. The next phase was about the guys in the overalls, getting the infrastructure fixed, getting the water back on, getting the power back on. This next phase to me is very much about the men in the suits. The guys running the insurance companies, my ability to persuade people out there to go out and get things done. Now, people ask me if I'm optimistic about the city. I am, as long as we don't get the architect who's involved in this building involved in the rebuild. And I say I'm optimistic for three reasons. And the first reason is just the geography of the town. We've still got Hagley Park, we've still got the river. The Port Hills are higher than they were before. But the geography, I think, matters, and I think the geography is still there. The second reason is the insurance thing. We're really well insured. I don't know of any international event of this scale where there's going to be as much insurance money flowing back in. There'll clearly be some capital flight. If you're a 75-year-old farmer from Timaru who owns a slug of Colombo Street, who's looking at using the architect to build this building here, he ain't going to be interested in being a property developer. He's going to take his money elsewhere. But I don't think it's going to be that hard attracting new capital in when they see the scale of the opportunity we have in the CBD. So the insurance thing, we're very, very well insured. Our land is insured. But the last thing is the people. I think there's a strong sense of community here. People want to make this work. I can ring anyone in Christchurch, almost anyone in the country, and they share pretty much the same values that I share. They really want to make this work. So lastly, I was just going to say, people also ask me at events like this about what they can do to try and make this go better. And I always say, start local. Start with your local community. Start with your immediate family, your friends and your neighbours. Make sure they are supported at times like this. And then think about how you take your kindness, your passion further afield. Because while I can do a lot, while the government can do a lot, at the end of the day, this is going to be about communities, families, investors and firms getting out there and rebuilding a city much stronger, much better than it was before. Thank you. Happy to take your questions. So we're still at the stage of the Christchurch City Council have got a central city plan. We've got that plan at the moment. That's up to our minister to approve. And then from there, we've then got to start thinking about what the process is beyond that. So there is debate about whether it's going to be just leave it entirely to the market, or it's going to be more planned, and that's the next stage of thinking that's going on at the moment. And I think we'll look at other events of this scale, and there are clearly advantages of having it more planned rather than less planned. Clearly there's some big opportunities to put some big civic facilities, put them in special places, and I think that's really the next stage of where we're at. I say if you go buy the wrong sort of light bulb, you're stuck with that for a year. Go buy the wrong sort of car, the wrong sort of bike, you're stuck with that for 5 years or 10 years if you really like keeping things. But if you set your cities out the wrong way, if you build your buildings the wrong way, you're stuck with that for 100 years or 200 years. So we have a real once-off opportunity here to do things much, much better.
Hello. I'm Joanne Stevenson from the University of Canterbury. I just wondered, looking at your experiences at Orion as CEO and then at CERA, can you give some insights on how you've managed staff well-being and staff stress throughout these periods? Because especially at Orion, you guys haven't had a break pretty much since September. So do you have any insights there?
I guess, the first thing was we just did stuff like we fed everybody. Like talking about on that very first day on February the 22nd, there was a restaurant in our, on our ground floor, the Megawatt. I remember Kate, who ran that restaurant, at about 4:30 or 5 o'clock saying, well, I'm going home now, Roger. I'll see it first thing tomorrow morning. And she came back the next morning with a couple of barbecues on the back of her old Volvo, and she cooked for us for weeks and weeks and weeks. So, and there's still food, they're still cooking lunch for them every day down there. But that first month was breakfast, lunch and dinner for anybody who wanted it. A succession of people came through, including mainly the Megawatt though. So there was the food stuff. We worked hard at reassuring people about the physical state. So engineers came through and calmly talked about the buildings we worked in. And they just talked about it until people were satisfied. They'd have a seminar, they'd talk about it, then they'd sit down in smaller groups. We did some stuff with some psychologists just sitting down, talking about stress, making people understand what stress was and how to manage it, and what some sort of fundamental golden rules were. I think overall, though, I guess the key lesson was in an organisation like Orion, I would have perhaps tested more for resilience in various people to make sure we actually had enough resilience around the organisation in key places to make sure that we had resilient people who could lead at times like that, because at times some of that leadership did actually get stretched. And I go back to scale there. The bigger the scale you've got, the easier it is to actually have other leaders that can come in and support. But I always like telling the story about one of those days very early on, it was raining, and I remember the CFO out in a beautiful cashmere jersey out in front of the building in this pouring rain, unloading a truck with cartons of water. And I thought, man, that's what I really like to see.
Roger, hi. Pierre Smolders from Mainland Press. Just a question. Peter Townsend, in his video introduction, talked about delay being, I think in his words, a cancer on the recovery. From a sort of big picture, what in your view are the high risk, I guess, bottlenecks that could cause delays, and what's being done about it from either your CERA or council?
So, yeah, no, delays are going to be a cancer, but we also had, and I guess that's one of my key roles, is trying to take people with us in terms of the speed of what the recovery happens at. Because if you think about something like the CBD, we actually only have one chance to do this properly. In terms of the insurers, I think sooner or later people are going to start comparing notes about which insurance companies are doing things at which pace, and I think the insurance company will start seeing their brands taking big hits when it becomes clear that Eko Tahuna Insurance is going much more slowly than Helensville Insurance. I think there's also a risk we're going to do things too quickly as well. I don't think there's any risk of that right now, but we also have issues around peak as well. Have a really big peak of workload, you have 20,000 people in single men's camps, then that's also going to cause us big social issues. So I don't think there's a right answer, but I think it's going to be for all the leaders to try and make people as patient as possible. Yeah. Rod Carr, I think you're talking later on, Rod. So I think Rod will talk a bit about that, but I think there is a risk that we also do a lot of damage to some of our key educational institutions through this. By definition, we're going to have lots of people coming to the city. Rents are going to go up for the students and those sort of things. I think that's going to be hard. I think the international student thing is maybe challenging for a time. The international students who came to learn English as a second language, I think that's going to be very, very hard, because by definition they basically took advantage of a whole lot of C-grade office space that was free, and we aren't going to have C-grade office space free for a while. But overall, I'm really happy selling this to young people. It's a place that's going to be exciting, a place with change, a place that's going to be dynamic. Yeah, I'm afraid I don't have any real insights there. I guess the only insight I'd say is, I hope we also use this as an opportunity to try and get some more movement between the different sorts of institutions. I'd like to think that if you've got a fantastic science facilities at a school, that maybe we are going to carry on two-shifting them. Am I allowed to suggest such sort of things, And maybe using the bloody university facilities during the university holidays. But, there's lots of great capital out there. There's lots of great facilities. How can we use them to best effect around the city to grow some great educational experiences? Yeah. Down here.
Yeah, Roger, John Craig from Opus. We know that CERA has been involved in the Fix It, Make Safe, and that's still going on at the moment. But one of the things that I think a lot of us are interested in is how that transition from that aspect of what you guys are doing to getting the rebuild underway and stitching in the various business groups that are out there that are currently finding a bit of frustration, how that's going to evolve.
Yeah, we're working hard to try and see how we can work between developers, engineers, and also tenants to try and give them a way of working effectively together. But I would like to think the CBD rebuild is going to be done in a way where people, if they go back into the CBD, aren't going to be surrounded for a long period of time by some sort of desert of demolitions and construction sites. So I think that's going to be a challenge, which is going to be good. Hopefully we can really make that work. I think there's an issue going on at the moment with engineers who are generally just being, we've got engineers at the moment who did a $5,000 job fixing up giving advice on a building, and then February the 22nd happened, and then they've now got a $50,000 bill for the engineer from lawyers to defend what they did. So working with the engineering fraternity so they don't get overly risk averse during this time, I think that's another challenge for us to work through as well.
Roger, just one from me. I couldn't agree more about getting the building right long term, the building the city. There seems a bit of a mismatch though that we were all invited to share ideas about the CBD, and we did. And you were there, and I was there, and people made videos and stuck up post-it notes or whatever. And there was some criticism that while there was a great energy there and a great vision, perhaps there wasn't some of the later strategic involvement of the business world. But it seems that outside the CBD, that CERA has the job of doing the rest of the city. Now, I agree with you about starting from the local, your family and moving out. But there seems a mismatch between those two things.
Yeah, I mean, the CBD, if you look at a map of terms of damage to the city, the damage to that CBD is far more severe than anybody else. There's a lot more work to be done, and the planning around that is much more important. If you go out to the outer suburbs, I think that planning is slightly less important. But we've put together a recovery strategy. We haven't yet done detailed plans of how each one of those suburbs come back. And I'd say for those suburban plans, whether they be about Littleton or Sumner, I think they're going to be largely led by local communities and the city. But I think it's important that all that comes together in some sort of integrated plan so we can think carefully about transport and all those other things which do need some proper planning.
Thanks, Roger. Gordon Sutherland,
Oh, Gordon.
W. Fraser. Just one thing that you said, it was about the speed of the recovery, and we all talk continually about how quickly we must do things. As an exporter operating in Christchurch, employing a lot of people, one of my huge concerns is if we rush things too fast, what we're going to do is we're going to drive up wages, we're going to drive up all of the costs for businesses like us, and we may end up with a fantastically new city devoid of businesses or export businesses that have been crushed in the rush to rebuild the city.
Yeah, that's right. Now, look, I mean, we're back to that speed of the rebuild. Politically, it's very easy to say it's all going to be done in 2 years' time or whatever. But the social consequences of that, of 30,000 people from Ireland living in a tent city in Hagley Park, that's the sort of thing. Where do they go? And in fact, I joked about that. Yeah, no, I won't. Yeah, no, I won't. No, I'll get myself into trouble. The mainland press is sitting out here. But also, as you say, the inflationary pressures as well on the whole country. But that's going to be hard, and that's when leaders are going to have to step up and help us lead that. And a lot of you are leaders as well, and we need your support to make sure that people do actually show the right level of patience. So, I think there's two things around that pacing. One's about the pace of physical work, and we need to find the right balance. The other one is about pace in terms of thoughtfulness as well. And, this is our once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Once in many lifetimes opportunity to do something really, really special. So I think it's part of your role as well, Gordon, to step up, and when people are bitching about it, for you to stand up and say, actually, there's some other trade-offs we have to do here as well. Thank you.